Today's the day to make some more bread. My wife thought it'd be a good idea to film part of it and perhaps put it up on our YouTube channel. So we're going to be making whole wheat bread this morning, and I'll talk you through the ingredients and what we actually do with it and how I grind the flour, because I buy my wheat as wheat grains and then I grind them myself in a home mill. So we'll have a look through that and you'll see how I actually make it from scratch. So let's make a start. Okay. Right. This is my flour mill. The wheat berries, as they say in America, or the wheat grain over here in the UK. They go, this is organic wheat that I buy by the 25 kilo sack, which is half a hundredweight in real money. And the wheat grain goes in the hopper and comes out through the spout into the bowl, ground as the finest flour I can get. You'll notice I've got some cling film over the bowl because there's not a lot of flour dust coming up as it comes out, but what little bit does come is got to settle somewhere, so I put a bit of cling film over the bowl to keep the dust in the bowl and not all over the bakery. And this thing is very, very noisy, so when it starts grinding my wife will have to turn the volume down a bit when she's editing, because it'll deafen you. But it only takes a couple of minutes to grind a kilo of flour. There's actually 1.1 kilos of wheat in this bowl. Well, it'll take a couple of minutes to do, so we'll jump to the end of that one. We won't watch it all the way coming through. And then when the flour comes out, it's warm, fresh from the mill. It's like any stone mill. This has got two donut shaped stones, exactly like the ones in the old windmills, water mills that you see in old films, only smaller, and it's electrically driven, so it does get warm. Now a lot of purists will shout, oh, you can't do that because when you grind it electrically the flour comes out too hot and kills all the vitamins and everything. Well, nonsense. You'll see when it's finished. Put my hand on it, it's only about 30 degrees, 35 degrees. It's lukewarm, it's not hot, don't exaggerate, it's just warm. Bearing in mind that in a couple of hours time it'll be going into an oven at 200 degrees centigrade, which is twice the temperature of boiling water. And when the bread comes out of the oven, over 90% of all the vitamins, minerals, enzymes and oils that were in the wheat grain are still in the bread, and that makes it the most nutritious bread you can eat. And they're all still there after being baked in the oven, so 30 odd degrees in the mill isn't going to do it any harm, and it's literally only lukewarm. So just to dispel that myth, we'll make a start, shall we? We must turn the machine on before you pour the wheat in, because if you put the wheat in first and then switch it on, sometimes the grains can jam the stones, and then you've got one devil of a job to get all that wheat out of the hopper before you can clear the stones. So always switch your machine on before you put the wheat in, because they're quite hard, and until the machine gets spinning it might not have the torque to crush and grind the first ones. Okay, so we'll make a start, yes? Right. You won't see Mrs. G, she's behind the camera, but she's in charge of the filming, so she'll kick me in the shins if I do something wrong. Right, so we'll switch on the machine. So there we are, hopper's empty, all the flour's in here. Take off the cling film. There wasn't much dust, but it keeps it within the bowl rather than on the shelves and all over the bakery. Right, we'll just have a little bit of cushioning. Now this is another thing. Oh, that feels warm, I said, didn't I? Let's have a look. We'll put the thermometer on. That's showing 21.4 room temperature. We'll stick that in this warm. It feels warm to the touch, but literally lukewarm. Where is that? That's in the middle of the bowl. This is a very accurate, it's a meat thermometer to put in your roast beef in the oven, but it's very accurate. It's showing 31.6 degrees. 30 degrees, 31.7 centigrade, that is. And that's all it is. It's just come out of the mill, it's warm from the stones, 30 degrees. That's like a warm summer's day. When you put your hand on it, it just feels pleasantly warm. Not hot, nothing silly, not doing it any harm. And in a couple of hours it'll be going in the oven at 200 degrees centigrade, and that doesn't kill them, so that's fine. Now, before we go any further, I put butter in my recipe. It helps to keep the bread soft, last a little bit longer, and it tastes nice. It's quite a common thing. This is the only extra thing I put in to basic bread. Basic bread has got 4 ingredients: flour, yeast, a little bit of salt and water, and that's basic bread, nothing else added. But I put a bit of butter in, it helps with the bread. Now, being real butter, I want it melted or very soft, so the easy way is put it in a little bowl. I've got hot water in the sink, float the bowl in the hot water, and while I get on with the other business of adding the ingredients together already, that's melting, ready to be added to it. So we'll leave that there for a few minutes in hot water. Now, I'm not a purist. When you make 100% whole wheat bread, a common problem is the bread tends to be a bit dense and a bit crumbly, and it's because of the lower gluten rate. It doesn't give it the strength in the crumb, and it doesn't hold together so well. Yeah, some people are fine with that, but we always make sandwich bread, and when you pick up a sandwich you don't want it falling in half in your hands. And the lower gluten rate is because 30% of whole wheat flour is the bran and the wheat germ, and there's no gluten in the wheat germ and in the bran. Well, the gluten comes later, but it comes from the protein. All the protein is in the white part, the endosperm. So you've got 30% less than you would have in white bread that most people are used to. So a quick way around it is to add a little bit of white flour to the mix, and that gives it that little bit extra strength. You know, you can vary the amount. 50, some people like 50-50 bread, half and half. I wanted as much whole wheat as possible, but with the strength, so I add 20% white flour, which is organic white flour made from the same wheat that this comes from, and that just gives it that bit of extra strength, a bit more rise in the tin, a lighter bread and tastier. This is our bread, this is what we eat, so I add it to there. If you want to stick with 100% pure, that's fine. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful bread, it tastes nice. There's a very slight difference in taste. We compromise and we add 20% of white. It's up, what you put in yours is up to you. It makes no difference to making the bread goes in the oven at the same temperature, and all the other ingredients are about the same. And just mix that in together, all the dry ingredients. So that's ready. If we get more mixing now, the next thing that goes in is the yeast. And what have I got? I look at my recipe because I make different recipes. There's 15 grams of instant yeast here, because this is a 2-loaf mix, and actually my tins are slightly larger than normal, so it's more like 2.5 loaves I need to fill the 2 tins. So I've got 15 grams of instant yeast in here, which is the one that you put straight in the flour. You don't have to add this to water to start it first, it'll come up on its own. So I'll just mix that briefly. It's all getting more of a mix now, because the next ingredient is the salt. Now, it's long been held that yeast doesn't like salt, which is true, yes, but it's not as critical as some thinks. But I always mix the yeast in first, so there's less contact. And being as it's it works out at about 10 grams per large loaf. I've got the mix for about 2.5 large loaves, so there's 25 grams of salt there. I'll mix that in just briefly. Some people don't mix it, they just pour it in and they say it gets mixed in the mixer. I just give it a quick, and it also mixes the brown and white flours together while I'm doing it. So that's ready for the mixer, and now we've got water ready. We're just waiting for the butter to melt now. Okay. See, the butter is starting to melt, floating away in the hot water. You don't want to force it, but give it a little twirl now and then, and it helps it to melt. It mixes it up, and it'll just take another minute or two. Meanwhile, I've measured out the water. That is a thing that you need to bear in mind when you're making whole wheat bread with home ground whole grains. You'll find it does require a bit more water than you would put into a white loaf, because it just absorbs more. So where with a white loaf you might only, with a mix this size, you might only want about 600 millilitres of water. With this whole wheat mix I need 820 millilitres of water, and even then the resultant dough can be a little bit stiff sometimes. It's surprising how much more water you need with home ground flour. So keep that in mind. You'll have to do it by trial and error at first and work out your own recipe, how much water you need in your bread when you make it. Bread making is a craft. There is a science behind it, but a lot of it is craft work. You learn it as you go along, because your bread will be different to everybody else's by the way that you make it. So I worked it out, 820 ml of water, and I've got 100 grams of butter. It's coming, it's melting down nicely. We're almost there. So we're almost ready to go in the mixer. Right, so we're ready to go in to the mixer. I used to mix it all by hand, and I prefer to mix it by hand and knead it by hand on the worktop in the traditional way, but I'm getting a bit old and doddery now, and got arthritis in my elbows from all the kneading, so I had to buy a stand mixer. The planetary mixers, like the ordinary, like the Kenwood and the KitchenAid, they're fine. I had a big KitchenAid, but I found with the larger mixes, especially with whole wheat bread, which is quite heavy and stiff, even the big KitchenAid was struggling a little bit to do the job. So that's passed on to somebody in the family, and I bought this Swedish and castrum. I think that's right. And it was designed before the Second World War as a bread mixer and kneader. You can make cakes with it, it makes lovely cakes, but it's initially designed as a bread machine, not a cake machine that can do bread. So it's sturdy and it's lasted me for years, and it'll probably see me out. And it's very easy to use. So we'll start now, we'll put the water in. With a mixer, you're doing it back to front, you put the liquids in first. I leave a little bit in the bottom of the bowl because I'm going to grease the tins and grease the bowl with that little bit in a minute. So that will do to grease the bowl and grease the tins. So liquids are in, start it up. There's only two speeds, on, off, and timer, and the speed. There goes the flour. With this mixer the bowl turns, and this roller is turned by the dough. It's not powered or anything, it turns, it's the dough going round that turns the roller, and the dough goes between the roller and the bowl, and that's what does the mixing, and later it's what does the kneading. I'll just pull it away, otherwise it'll push it up and it'll all come up over the top. So I can carry on adding the flour now. You see it is mixing in there nicely. It's a brilliant mixer for making bread. A nice and easy access to get into it. Initially it'll look a bit dry, but as it mixes more, needs more, it mixes the water into the flour and it does come a bit softer. Let's get the last little bit in. All in. Now, you see this is going around, this is just mixing at the moment, it's not kneading, it's mixing the dough between the bowl and the roller. See, I can stop this. It's the dough that's pulling it round, that's just free turning. And the grooves in the roller are what knead the dough. So it's starting to come together now. It's coming off the bowl, and when it's coming clean off the bowl, more or less as it is now, it's ready to increase the speed a little and set the timer for the kneading. Some people will leave it on this lowest speed for the whole period, and that's fine, it just takes a little longer. When I set it to knead, I set the timer to 15 minutes. That's it. So it's ready now. It doesn't have to be flying round. That's plenty fast enough. As I said, a lot of people don't have it going that fast. It's starting to come together now, gradually into one. So it's coming up into one lump of dough now. That's it, and it's time to set the timer now. I'll set it for 15 minutes. Some will say less. I think technically it only needs about 8 to 12 minutes in this machine, but with this bread I like it well kneaded to get as much rise out of it, as much gluten formed as possible, so I set it to 15. And that works for me. Okay, got my remaining little bit of butter to grease the bowl, grease the tins. Sorry about the noise, it's the mixer in the background. You might find whole wheat bread does tend to stick to the tins a bit more than white bread, so although these were initially non-stick tins, they still need a bit of greasing. Otherwise, I did find that when I first started using them and making whole wheat bread, the bread was sticking like anything to the tins and I couldn't get it out of the tins. So right, that's had over 15 minutes, so that's all needed. As it goes round, the grooves in the roller, they knead it like your fingers would do if you were doing it by hand. It goes round and round that way and it squeezes between the roller and that. So it's had a good kneading for a quarter of an hour, it's time to turn it down. That's it, all nice and kneaded. And just pull that off. That's ready for a wash. That's ready for a wash. That's ready for a wash. And there's my lovely dough. So we take that out, give it a bit of a quick hand knead. Excuse me. That's ready for a wash. A lot of people like to put some flour on the worktop to stop it sticking to the worktop. I've never, all the years I've been doing it, I've never needed somehow to put flour on there. You can knead it straight on the worktop. The worktop is clean. That's the first thing I do before I start, is clean the worktop. And it kneads, it's not sticking. Just giving it an extra bit of a knead. Just push it. Just push, push, roll, push, roll. And that's stretching the gluten, making it as elastic as we can get it, because that's what's going to hold your bread together. And that's what stops it crumbling in your hands. And a little bit of white flour in it gives it that little bit more strength. If you don't want the white flour, that's fine. 100% bread is lovely. That's it. Into the bowl. Give it a press down, turn it over so it's got a little bit of butter around the surface. Helps to stop it drying out. And that's ready to go into my little secret. Okay, so now we have our bread in the bowl, or the dough, ready to rise, and we need to leave that in for, well, until it roughly doubles in size. It'll swell and grow in the bowl probably to the top of the bowl, or even a little bit over sometimes. So some people you leave it to just stand at room temperature. That might take an hour and a half. Depending on your room temperature, it could take a couple of hours. I speed it up a little bit. I've got warm water in the sink. It's a little method I've found. I put a washing up bowl floating in the warm water. Put my little grid in the bowl. Put the bowl in there so that it's not touching the warmth of the plastic, and that'll keep it a nice warm temperature, not hot. You don't want to upset the yeast, but it'll just keep it nicely warm. And I made a lid to go on the sink, cover over the hole, set the timer going. 1, 2, 3 seconds, little time. Normally doing it like this it takes about 40 minutes to rise to the right up to the top of the bowl. And being inside the sink with the lid on and the warm water, the sort of moisture from the warm water comes up and stops the dough from drying out on the surface. If you left it on the worktop without a cover on it, the surface goes a bit dry and stiff and stops it rising a little bit. So you can either put a tea towel over it, some people put a damp tea towel over the bowl for it to rise and keep it moist. I put it in here, the warmth from the water comes over and it keeps the surface lovely and soft and moist, and then it rises to its maximum amount. It takes around about 40 minutes. So we'll go and put our feet up now for a bit and we'll come back to you later and we'll see what it's doing. It's had 45 minutes. Should have checked a few minutes ago really, but let's have a look. Oh my goodness, it's come up so high it's touching the lid almost. See if I can get the lid up. It hasn't stuck. Oh no, it's alright. See, you can see the condensation underneath the lid, keeping it nice and moist. It's lovely. And that's risen from that lump in the bottom of the bowl right up to the top. Let me put that on there briefly because it's wet. Okay, so there we have a lovely bowl of dough, and that's ready to come out of there, separate it into two halves to put in the tins and back in the bowl to rise again in the tins the second time, the second rise. So you need to press down, push the air out of it this time. Nothing fancy, just push it back down. It's to come out of the bowl. Unstick it, out it comes. Lovely. Let's give it a bit of a... Only briefly. Put the scales on. I'll weigh it to cut it in half to divide it equally for the two tins. 2.35 kilos because it's got all the moisture in it and everything. So I've got that in half. It's 1.150, 1.75, 1.76, 1,176 grams ish. 50, 59, get there in a minute, 176.6, what's this one? 1,175, that's close enough, it's within 1.5 grams, that's a pinch like that, so close enough. Now, switch him off, so we just try and get the air out. Don't want any big air bubbles in my loaf of bread, thank you. It's a hole in the sandwich. Now, this is the bit that's personal to everybody who makes bread. Everybody's got their own way of kneading the dough before you put it in the tin. What you want is to go in the tin and for it to rise up as much as you can. But there is a bit of a trick to it. If you can stretch the top a bit, it'll rise better. If I just dump it straight in the tin, it'll rise, but it just that little bit less. So everybody has their own way of doing it. This is how I do it. I squeeze it in at the bottom. You can see it stretching upwards at the top. So the top part is stretching, and that helps it to rise in the middle at the top. So let's turn it. That's how I do it. As a stretch, and similarly, I shape it now. I'm pushing it down to stretch up and make a sausage shape to fit in the tin. Everybody has their own way of doing it. This is mine, and that will fit in the tin like that. And the other one the same. round and squeeze it in, squeeze the top up. Again, I don't need any flour on the worktop. I've seen people dumping, well, if you dump too much on there and that gets absorbed into the dough, you've altered the recipe. So it's different and takes the moisture out of it. I've never needed it, it's clean on there. Stretching it upwards. I mean, if I was in a commercial bakery, I'd be worn out doing this with about 150 loaves, but I'm only doing 2 loaves, so it's fine for me. More in the tin. So they're both ready now to go back in the sink. And that water's been in the sink now for 3/4 of an hour at least. It's cooled off a bit. What is it like? Oh, it's still warm. So it's more than room temperature. So it's warm enough to make the bread rise and warm enough for the air over it to keep the top of the dough reasonably soft and moist to not dry up and crust over. So that will help it to rise its maximum amount. So they're all in there now. So we'll set the timer. Just set it to run. 1, 2, yeah. And that, I'll have to check it in about 30 minutes. It'll be rising nearly over the top of the tin. That's the time to put the oven on. My oven takes about 10 minutes to heat up to temperature. That'll be 40 minutes total. It'll be up high, ready to go in the oven. So we'll just put the lid on. Put this over the hole. That's my inspection hatch, just to see how it's rising. And then this thick board keeps the warmth in, keeps the temperature warm. And that'll sit there now for about half an hour, and I'll check it. And if it looks about right, switch the oven on quick. 10 minutes in the oven. That's it. So go and put my feet up again now for a bit. The bread's risen in the tins in the bowl, and it's more than ready to go in the oven now. Actually it's come right up above the tins and it's starting to spread over the edges. If you leave it like that for too long, you end up with a pair of mushrooms. They come up and they spread right out. So it's got to go in the oven now. The oven's up to temperature 200 degrees centigrade. Don't burn your fingers. And the other. Up to 30 to 35 minutes. I put it in for 35 or thereabouts, and then I'll check it just before it's due to come out. So, okay, time's up. A moment of truth. That's loose. It's not stuck in the tin. It's worth greasing. Very, very hot. Yes. I find these barbecue gloves great for an oven glove. You don't burn your fingers. That is very, very hot. And a good test, it's cooked. Got a hollow sound. Cook all the way around. And that's it. 2 loaves of, well, I suppose you would call it wheatmeal bread, because it's not 100% whole wheat, but it's still beautiful bread. And we'll come back a bit later. They'll take a couple of hours to cool, because I cut my bread, because we only eat it in sandwiches. I like thin sliced bread. I have a bread slicer, an ordinary kitchen bread slicer, and it's got to be cold to cut onto that. So we'll come back in a bit. Now, because we like our bread only for sandwiches in this house, I've just got an ordinary domestic slicer. It's like a meat slicer, but it cuts bread nice and thin. We like thin sliced bread. And this is the advantage of having a bit of white flour in the mix. It makes it good, strong, elastic bread, like a white bread. If this was 100% whole grain bread, it would be a bit more crumbly and might not have risen quite so well, which doesn't affect the taste. It's still, well, if anything, it's tastier bread. But if you want thin sliced sandwiches, you need a little bit of strength, or it's going to fall apart in your hand. So that's how we like it. Obviously you make your bread the way you like it, and you tweak the recipes to the way you like it. Like, I've developed my recipes over the years, and this is just a crib sheet of how I make it. That's all the ingredients. See, there's only 5, and there's white bread, 100% whole wheat bread, 50-50 bread, half white, half whole wheat, and this is what this is: 80% home ground whole wheat flour, 20% white flour, whole wheat white. And that's the yeast, the butter, the water, and the salt. Obviously this is for 2 loaves, and because I use the long low tins, they hold a bit more dough, so I found that the standard recipe for half a kilo per loaf of flour, or 2 pounds of flour for 2 loaves, didn't quite fill the tin properly, so I've increased the amounts. So really it's more like over 2.5 loaves of mix to fill the 2 tins. If you want a standard recipe, go to any of the big flour mills that make the flour that you buy in a supermarket. Go on their website, and they've all got pages of bread recipes for making bread with their flour, and that's a good start. If you start with a recipe like that, a basic recipe, make it, and if it's good, stick with it. If you think, oh, it needs a bit more of this, or I need a slightly bigger mix, so make it bigger. You'll end up tweaking the recipes to suit you, like everybody else does. And the same when you come to knead the dough. If you're doing it by hand, you'll find your own way to knead the dough. Everybody does it themselves. That's what a craft is. Everybody practices their craft in their own way that suits them. So, but this is the bread we make for us, and as long as you enjoy making it and you enjoy eating it, you make it the way you make it. You don't have to copy everybody else or the people online. If you want a bit more advice and help, go on YouTube. There's countless channels of people making bread, but if you're a UK resident and you want a British channel, one of the best I've seen is one called Bake with Jack, and if you search in Bake with Jack on YouTube, he makes bread. Doesn't do cakes and all the other baking, he's bread only, and you can learn a lot with Jack. He's very good. It's worth checking him out. Okay, so this is my bread, and hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck and have fun.